一种情况是敌人守，一种是敌人要退不退，再一种是敌人退了。Oh, hello, friends. Welcome to my home. This is Type 56, the story of the SKS and AK-47 in China. I'm Jason Clower, and this is my son, Ke Yongren. I was just reading to him before bed, as we always do, from the works of Marshal Lin Biao. Lin Biao was arguably to the tactics of the classic PLA what Mao Zedong was to strategy. It's tactician of record and the man who put his trademark on the signature tactics that made the Golden Age PLA what it was. Unique and within its specialties, world class and unrepeatable, an epoch making force that really wrote the history for the rest of insurgent warfare for the century to come. I prepared a video for you today where I begin by talking about the stealth tactics that made all the different kinds of PLA attacks possible. And although I was planning on keeping the video there, really just covering basically the peculiar individual movement techniques that made classic PLA tactics possible by using stealth and misdirection and deception to the absolute utmost. Even though I planned on stopping there and not getting into the more theoretical parts of PLA tactics, I simply could not resist. So I ended up spinning the scenario out just a little bit farther so that we could see where the setup that I envisioned could maybe take us, why the troops making their furtive, nighttime, stealthy approach to the imperialist lines, why they might have decided to get into that position. And so we end with an example of actual PLA tactics. Just one example out of many, still just a kind of precursor to a more formal study of the principles, mostly authored by Lin Biao, or that took his name. Um, so, but think of this as a sort of preliminary case study. It's not going to tell you everything that you need to know about tactics, but like I said, this wasn't even supposed to be a lesson in tactics in the beginning. It's just I got excited and carried away and turned it into the beginnings of one. So let this whet your appetite. Uh, don't worry if you feel like you haven't gotten the whole picture or all the answers just from this one, because we've just begun to scratch the glorious surface of classic PLA tactics. In fact, I'm just going to talk right now about another classic Lin Biao tactical concept called two aspects or two faces, one point. Friends, FYI, in Chinese, this is always said 1.2 faces, 一点两面. For some reason, I kept switching them around. It's neither here nor there, but I just wanted to make a note. This is just one possible application of that principle. Maybe another way for the blue squad to effect its infiltration through the Oreo wire undetected, as we were saying, to have this battle group up here start like Tommy gunning or making a bunch of noise, and they're supported in some way that's been planned ahead of time by these guys. Oh, maybe they're concussion grenading the near Oreos, who are the greatest threat to their comrades up here. Maybe they're not announcing their presence yet, but they're trying to throw concussion grenades into these foxholes. Maybe, just maybe, as part of their plan, this squad has support way in their rear from a mortar, and the mortar has instructions that when they start hearing or seeing Tommy gun fire or a Papa Shot fire coming from this area, they're supposed to start dropping a couple of precious mortar shells that we're going to represent with Skittles. And so our mortarmen back here have been told to wait for the submachine gun fire,
to come from up here and then start dropping a rainbow of fruit flavors onto these Oreos. Even though it's a small little mortar attack with just a few shells allotted for it, maybe our red squad, its other 2/3, is going to get as close as they dare, and they're going to start hurling concussion grenades into these foxholes. What that will hopefully do is keep the foxholes here completely in the dark about their proximity. These guys are taking some real mortar shells, and all they know is there are a bunch of explosions going off. If they do this right, they're going to be deceived by the few real mortar shells that are going down enough that they don't get that the grenades being dropped in on top of them are grenades, which are pretty easy to come by, and not actual mortar shells. From their subjective perspective, they are going to be under the illusion that they are under massive mortar fire. And I'm just making this up as I go, but while that is happening then, and the attention of these positions is preoccupied with the fate of their comrades who are undergoing this half real, half illusory mortar attack, maybe that's when they've been instructed to make their covert insertion through the wire and then peel off right and left to go up and down the line of foxholes and deal with these guys as quietly as they can. That would probably mean either bayonets or some discrete concussion grenades. One of the principles that I hope that you're beginning to detect now is that you only fire if you have to, if you are the PLA Swedish fish, because fire is so noticeable, and at times in our campaigns, as we've talked about, ammunition is hard to come by, as we've talked about. But at the very least, it's noisy, it telegraphs your presence, and so if the planners know what they're doing, and this plan is being executed well, then ideally, the firing is only going to happen, that is actual gunfire, will only happen when the noise and the flash, that's going to be very attention-grabbing for the enemy, are calculated to divert the enemy's attention from the real attack. I mentioned a moment ago that this is an example of a principle in classic PLA tactics called two sides or two aspects, one point. The idea there is that multiple feints are being made, or multiple, let's call them diversions or distractions, to cover some other attack that represents the real concentrated pinpoint attack. And maybe what they've been told to do is fan out at a safe distance from well-covered positions, and at a certain point in the fight, maybe they are supposed to engage these Oreos, or maybe the whole line. They're supposed to engage these Oreos and make another demonstration attack to hold the attention of these dudes so that they're oblivious to this squad coming through here. Now, you might be wondering, okay, but how do we avoid fratriciding the green squad as it's going in and moving along? Well, I'm just pulling this out of my Ba Mao. Maybe the green squad has been told, since this is a demonstration attack, we want you to fire high. Maybe you're not even really trying to hit anything. That would be quite characteristic. Maybe their job is just to spread out a thin line of guys and just make some noise and muzzle flashes from a thin line up and down here to create the impression that there's a big, broad main effort coming over here. They're gonna know, at least fairly well, where and when their blue team comrades are coming through the wire. This is another benefit to the use of microterrain and the sparing use of fire in the attack. It means that if you are an infiltrating squad or a battle group that is snaking its way along early in the attack, maybe you're the lead element, trying to get up close and you're snaking your way back and forth, following the microterrain. One benefit of the PLA's low volume of fire approach is that any fire coming from behind you is only going to be happening per plan. It's not that they're going to get the rest of the squad or the platoon backed up as just like some big base of fire where they just tell them, okay, guys, you act as the anvil while the hammer sneaks around but sticks closely in its lane of fire so they don't wander out of it and get shot by you. No, in the PLA version of this, there's not this big barrage coming from behind them just as a matter of standard operating procedure. If the planners have authorized any preparatory or supporting fire from the rear, everybody's going to know that its main purpose is to distract or cover something. People are going to be very accustomed to the idea that maybe their real job, if they've been assigned to give supporting fire from the rear while the blue squad sneaks up here, these guys in the back, let's say they've been assigned to make this big demonstration from back here, they're going to understand perfectly well, and they'll be reminded that their job isn't actually to paste the objective with fire. Their job is to look big and scary and menacing, but really they're distractions. They are a deception unless otherwise assigned. And so that gives our assault element of creeping, crawling little dummy groups, that gives them very wide latitude to roam all over this space, unrestricted to any particular lane of advance. They own this space. They can use it however they need to. And as long as everybody's following the usual PLA modus operandi, they're not in any great danger of getting hit by friendly fire.
Friends, for the moment, that concludes our runaway lesson on individual movement techniques in the classic PLA that turned into an impromptu lesson on tactics. For this evening, we'll draw things to a close here, and we'll return to a more formal study of classic PLA small group tactics and all its different possibilities in application in a future episode. This is Type 56, the story of the SKS and AK-47 in China. Friends, if you like this sort of content, and I know my little man Ke Yongren does, please like and subscribe. In fact, you might even consider sharing. There is a lot more of this content to come, and I cannot wait to bring you more.